Good evening. This is CTV News for Friday, February the 22nd. I'm Sonia Shrivastava. Thank you for joining us. We begin tonight with a new development in the 2012 slaying of a teenager in Capitol Heights. Prince George's police say they plan to announce an arrest in the murder of 18-year-old Markel Ross next week. Ross, a Central High School student, was shot to death while walking to school last September. It's believed he was the victim of a robbery attempt. Just this week, police arrested 5 men in connection with the murder of Suitland High School student Charles Walker Jr. Well, it has been a rough 6 months for the community as families, residents, and classmates mourn the loss of a number of young people. Officials with the Prince George's Department of Family Services remind residents about several free services that can help provide emotional support. A spokesperson says a few of the programs specifically target youth.
We have a Maryland Youth Hotline that is catered specifically to the youth. Typically, if something happens, particularly in a neighborhood or a school, the school system will call a crisis response system and have them actually go to the actual school to provide counseling for individuals or groups.
While officials encourage the community to use the 24-hour services, residents suggest other solutions. Here is the great aunt of one of the victims.
Walker Jr. is my nephew's son, which makes him my great nephew. It's almost impossible to say what one can do, but the community on a whole needs to get together and learn to pray and work together and try to teach. Even though these guys were so much older, they need to try and teach these folks guns is not the way.
For me, it's kind of hurting because there are young people that we're losing. And I think we need to come back together as a community, parents, teachers, pastors, just people that are standing out on the corner. I have two sons of my own, and I encourage them, pick up a kid that doesn't have a dad. Take him with you when you go somewhere. And I think we need to get back to that.
Now, anyone who wishes to seek help can call the County Crisis Hotline at 1-800-422-0009 or 211 to connect to Health and Human Resources. Well, meanwhile, county and public safety officials are trying to pull the community together to help combat the growing problem of youth-on-youth violence. In just 6 months, a total of 7 teenagers have been gunned down in Prince George's County. And Council Chair Andrea joins us now to weigh in on the issue and the stories that were leading up to your interview. You saw that there is, there's a lot of frustration amongst residents. What were your thoughts when you saw these numbers?
Well, first of all, anytime we see young people who are violently harmed in any way is very hurtful to us. Our hearts go out to those families and their friends who are dealing with this loss. But secondly, one thing that I have always said is that we really have to be more active in our communities. We've gotten to a point in our history, basically, where we are just not the community that we used to know. We don't know our neighbors anymore. We don't have time for civic association meetings or PTA meetings. We don't have time to say hi to each other and just have a conversation. And so we're all at fault with that, and we all have to work together to try and combat some of that nonchalantness in our neighborhoods.
Absolutely. And none of these murders are connected, and they did not happen on school grounds, which makes the situation slightly more complicated.
Yeah, it's a social issue. It's a social issue. And so, how do we address that? And I think that that's the question that's on everyone's mind. How do we find out what the root cause is and what is the actual solution? And so, we all have to get together and talk about it. Next week, council leadership and the county executive police, we're actually going to come together and start having some discussions on what can we do on the short term and in the long term to try and deal with some of this. And no one has the answer, all of the answers. No one group can do it all, but we have to involve everyone. And right now, there's a lot of interest because of everything that has happened over this last year. There's a lot of interest right now, but what we have to find is an effective and sustainable solution to whatever it is that we're going to do. You can't go in guns blazing and start shooting up everything just because, you know, it's a reaction, but we need to really think about it so that we do have something that is effective and sustainable.
Absolutely. And earlier today, Chief Kevin Davis, he was on News Channel 8 talking about conflict resolution. What would you say students need to learn that in school? Do we need to put that in the curriculum?
Amongst other things. And does it need to be a part of the curriculum? I'm not sure. I'm not an educator. There needs to be something. You know, is it that we have conflict resolution in the school as part of the curriculum? Do we have programs after school, at the elementary, middle school, and high school levels? What are we going to do in the community? What is the community going to do?
Absolutely, and it is a very complicated issue and certainly something that the community needs to be a part of.
Absolutely.
We appreciate your time tonight.
Thank
you,
you.
Ms. Harrison.
Thank
Well, if
you.
you have suggestions on ways to help stop youth violence in the community, you can contact Ms. Harrison's office at 301-952-3864. Well, Maryland is one step closer to having some of the strictest gun control laws in the nation. The Senate Judicial Proceedings Committee approved Governor Martin O'Malley's Firearms Safety Act by a vote of 7-4. The law would ban assault rifles and decrease the maximum capacity of ammunition magazines from 20 to 10. It will also update handgun licensing requirements to include digital fingerprinting, improve school security, and restrict people who have been involuntarily committed to psychiatric facilities from purchasing guns. Now, the legislation now moves to the floor of the Senate, where additional amendments are expected to be introduced. And will the death penalty get abolished in Maryland and replaced with life in prison without the possibility of parole? In a 6-5 vote Thursday evening, a key state Senate committee approved the bill. Passage sends the bill to the House of Delegates for another important vote. If the repeal bill passes, Maryland would become the 18th state to outlaw capital punishment.